Good morning and welcome to the Center for Spiritual Living, Midtown Atlanta. Such is the nature of life that all it asks and all it wants is the opportunity to appear. You are that opportunity, and so am I, and so it is. Whoever you are, whatever path brought you here today, please know that you are welcomed and celebrated. We know who you are. You are an individualized expression of the divine life in which we all live. We are life's opportunity to be someone unique and wonderful. Whatever your ethnic background, religious affiliation, however you know yourself or describe yourself, you are welcome to be a part of this community in whatever way serves you. Here's our vision statement. We are a strong, open, globally connected community centered on the clarity of principle through teaching, service, and practice. We create a safe and respectful environment that supports healthy spiritual growth. And for a better understanding of who we are and what we teach, listen to our Declaration of Principles as written by our founder, Ernest Holmes.
A few of the Declaration of Principles we live by.
I believe in one God, one absolute power, and first cause to all things.
I believe that this power is perfect love, and it creates out of a desire to express love.
I believe all thought is creative, and how I choose to think creates my personal experience.
I believe in the unity of all life, and the immortality of the individual soul forever unfolding.
I believe in the eternal goodness, the eternal loving kindness, and the eternal givingness of God to all.
And so it is.
So grateful, hey.
So a practitioner is someone who has demonstrated the ability to use spiritual practice and spiritual laws to bring about great changes in their lives. And they have demonstrated they know about how to bring about these changes in others when asked. Licensed by Centers for Spiritual Living, they are available to you to provide guidance and support in those areas where you're looking for assistance. And you can contact them through our website, cslmidtown.org. Today, we have one of our amazing practitioners with us to share good ideas and affirmative prayer called the Spiritual Mind Treatment. Welcome, Maya Fuller.
So much. Greetings, CSL Midtown, and happy second week of July. This month, our theme is whole no matter what. And the invitation is a powerful one. Not to chase wholeness, not to earn it, but to recognize it as something we already are. Ernest Holmes himself said it beautifully. He said that there is a heart that is within every individual which partakes of the nature of the universal whole. Our soul will never change or violate its own nature. We are wholeness itself. And that is the ground that we're standing on this month. This week, we turn our attention to the relationship between our inner world and how we show up in the world, and how recognizing our own wholeness can actually change the way we move through every relationship and every room we enter. Today's speaker is going to take us deeper into that. His talk is entitled, Who I Think I Am Reflects How I Am. And in his own words, here's what he's bringing today. Who we believe we are sources how we express in the world. This week, we will dance with how laying down our masks and being authentic opens the door to seeing the divine in everyone and expressing as a presence of divine love in all our relationships. But first, let's take a moment together to settle into truth before he speaks. So before we begin, I just want to invite you to arrive fully to this moment right here, right now. This space is for you. So whatever you were doing before you logged on, whatever's still running in the background of your mind, just for these few minutes, let it be here without your attention on it. And just breathe. Just take a breath in and let it go. And another, a little deeper this time. And letting it go, letting your shoulders drop, letting your jaw unclench, letting your face relax. And close your eyes if that feels comfortable for you. Or you can just let your gaze soften and let yourself just land, just be here, right now, exactly as you are. And as always, I'm going to be offering this treatment in the first person, speaking it as my own truth, because I know that as I speak these words for myself, I'm speaking them for every heart and mind that's tuned in and open to receiving these words for themselves. So I welcome you to receive them as your own. So we're just taking this time to know the truth that there is only one life, one presence, one intelligence, one love, expressing in, through, and as everything that exists. There's nowhere that this presence is not. There's no one it has missed. And I am an expression of that right now as I am. I am whole already. I am complete already. That wholeness and completeness is solid and unchanging, untouched by anything I've been through, anything I've done, anything I've believed about myself along the way. It's always been there, steady underneath everything. It's always been me. I am whole. And today, I'm living from that place. I'm deciding to live from that place. I'm choosing to live from that place. I'm affirming that I always live from that place. I might have worn masks before. We all have. We learn early how to adjust ourselves, a little more of this, a little less of that, depending on who's watching, who's judging, who's criticizing, who's evaluating, even if that someone is me. But the self, the true self underneath all of that adjusting has always been perfect, whole, and complete, just as I am. And I have always been worthy of love and connection, just as I am. I am worthy of love and connection, just as I am. And as I live from that authentic place, as the real me shows up in my relationships, in my conversations, in the quiet moments when no one is watching, love moves through me honestly and genuinely. Because divine love doesn't need to be performed or perfected. It simply lives in me, through me, and as such touches everyone I meet, every space I come into. And I give thanks that this is so. I'm grateful for this truth today. I carry it with me to every relationship, every intention, every interaction, every moment of this day and beyond. I remember the truth of who I really am. A perfect and divine expression of the all, of the whole, just as I am. So I release this treatment into the law, knowing that it is already so, already done, already real for me and for every person who's receiving this as their own today. And I let it be, and so it is. Amen.
It's my pleasure to introduce our speaker this morning. Reverend James Peake is an advocate for practicing kindness and living the presence as the presence of unconditional love. He's an ordained Center for Spiritual Living minister and has served as senior minister of a local community, teaches in the CSL Latin School of Spiritual Leadership. He's currently the director of information technology at CSL Home Office in Colorado. And he has been here recently, so not much more to do that, but he enjoys living in the pines in the foothills of the Rockies with his son and 2 granddogs, along with hiking and golfing. So welcome back, Reverend James.
Thank you, man. That's great to be here. Yeah, I used to be, if you're paying attention in the past, you might have heard of 1 grand dog, but actually there's 2 now. And if she gets a little too ornery outside my office door, you might hear her. But, that's the way puppies are sometimes, right? So it is wonderful to join you once again. And I look forward to this dance this morning, where we really look at how our thoughts influence how we show up in the world. That's really the bottom line. But if you noticed, I don't know, maybe it's just me, that humans tend to think a lot. I mean, just, ongoing and ongoing and ongoing. I was working with somebody once as a spiritual guide supporter. And I said, well, how often do you have gaps in your thinking? Because in the gaps is where a lot of the intuition or the intuitive guidance comes in. And she said, what do you mean? My brain is always thinking. And it was really enlightening for me, because up until then, I assumed most folks, sometimes they would think, sometimes not. But evidently, there's quite a number of folks who the brain doesn't shut off. But we do tend to think a lot, and if we go back to Descartes, his famous phrase of "I think, therefore I am" really was the foundation of most philosophical debate that came about, and it's really many recognize it like the start of common philosophy, thinking, and debating. And of course, in Science of Mind, one of the phrases is "change your thinking, change your life." We don't say change your heart, change your life, even though we know the impact of opening our heart can have on our experience and others. But a lot of thinking going on. And what it really comes down to is that the self that we think we are, we imagine ourselves to be, and I'll come back to that idea of imagination, is the quiet source of everything that we express, how we show up, and that every relationship in some way is a mirror of who we think we are. So there's 3 mindsets I'd like to explore this morning as we look at this relationship between our thoughts and our expression, our belief and how we show up. And those 3 mindsets are a belief in hiding, a belief in authenticity, and ultimately being wise beyond any belief that may be going on. So the first one is the belief in hiding. Now, Maya, in her introduction, mentioned wholeness. And when we forget that wholeness, and some of us may have never been aware of it until recently, until we found a center such as Midtown. But when we forget our wholeness, we construct a self out of fear. It's out of this egoic fear, and we believe ultimately we need to protect it. It's really a challenging and in some ways a heinous relationship. But it begins with the single idea that, I am separate, that there's a me that's separate from everything. And of course, society's great at supporting this idea, right? All of our culture, the way we were brought up, our teachings, if you really think about the world as a whole, and how many billions of people are on the planet, how many were brought up with the idea that we're all just expressions of one life, right? I have no idea, but I would imagine it's an infinitesimally small number of folks. And so the idea that we're separate just really is the common consciousness on the planet. And it feeds into this relationship that we end up building with the fearful ego. Now, the ego ultimately is just a mental construct. It's the idea that I'm separate, that there's a me that's separate, and that ultimately I have a self that's alone in the world. I've got to manage all my thoughts, all my feelings, all my emotions, my whole world on my own. Now, it can lead to a sense of victimhood, but you can also become empowered and strive from that ego. But so often, it's a fear-based experience. And we all want to be loved. Even those who may claim that love and empathy aren't really desirable, that money and power is more desirable. But deep down, I believe everybody at their core wants to feel loved. And when we believe we're on our own, sometimes we're too afraid to really show who we are. So we build this mask. We're going to show up a certain way. And we're told, how often have we been told, oh, you're going for a job interview, put your best foot forward, look good, you better wear the right suit, say the right thing, you want to leave a good first impression. But what's an impression? Is it really who you are? And we manage this image to try to look good, but ultimately, it's really not who we are. We're projecting who we think we need to be to get a job, to find a partner, to be loved. And there's a real tangible cost to operating this way in the world. So we go back to the idea, there's a me wanting to be loved, but we're too afraid to be truly open and vulnerable. So what's the end result? Well, the end result is that even when love shows up, it lands on the mask. It can't penetrate the mask. We can't feel total acceptance. We can't feel the unconditional acceptance, the love that's there because we've been putting up the mask. It's not who we are, but it's the thing that gets loved. Now, the mask promises safety, but it really delivers isolation. A disguise can never really truly be known. It's certainly not an expression of wholeness. So when that love hits the mask, it still leaves the heart hungry. Now, I have a question. What if everything the ego fears the most, the very thing it fears the most, being seen exactly as we are, is actually the doorway home? Well, that doorway has a name. And it's not something we necessarily talk a lot about in the spiritual community, but it's courage. And courage opens the door to a belief in authenticity, a move away from I need to hide to being authentic, to being open, a willingness to be seen and loved. Now, it may sound a little weird that someone isn't willing to be loved, but it actually takes a fair amount of vulnerability to be willing to be unconditionally loved. Because we can have those old stories, I'm not good enough. What if they don't love me? I wasn't loved when I was young. I couldn't express who I really was. I would get in trouble. And so there's a foundation of fear there. But as we move into a belief in authenticity, we drop the mask and we're willing to stand in our vulnerability. We let ourselves be seen. Now, there's no guarantee that we're going to be loved, and that's where the courage comes in. Because just because I'm being open and authentic and showing folks who I really am doesn't mean that I'm necessarily going to be loved. But when we're willing to drop the mask, we create a real opportunity to feel loved. And as we do, something reorganizes within our beingness. We start to shift beyond an image. We recognize the fallacy and the limitation in the idea of an image, that an image has to be a certain way. We can stop the whole one-arm paper hanger thing of constantly, this has to look good here, this has to look good over there. And trust me, I'm speaking from experience. There was a time in my life where I was recently remarried, had an infant at home, teenage daughter, teenage stepdaughter. I was the super practitioner at the center I was serving at the time, which meant that I was on the podium regularly on Sundays, basically running service other than the speaking and the treatment by the senior minister. I led a men's group along with a couple other practitioners. My stepfather and I were running a small business, and I was going at night school. Yes, that's right. And at night school, I was going to night school to earn my undergraduate degree so I could enter Holmes Institute, because at the time, there was a requirement that you had to have an undergraduate degree to enter the Holmes Institute because it was an accredited master's program. All of that was going on. So you'd think that's crazy enough as it is just to do that stuff. But my mindset was, oh, it's got to look good. It's got to look good. Every little thing has to look great. Otherwise, I don't get acknowledgement. I don't get praise. Ultimately, I'm not going to be loved. Now, fortunately, in my case, the aha moment came, and I realized that it was all just a mask. It was all an image that was going on. Not that these weren't noble intentions, but the driving force behind them, the scaffolding, if you will, was very weak. It wasn't very solid. It wasn't a solid spiritual foundation. It wasn't a call. And so I'm very clear that as we drop the mask and we become vulnerable, we may not get loved. But typically we can find at least a couple people in our lives. And in this teaching, they tend to be, if we're in a community, they tend to be around us, whether they be ministers, practitioners, general members. But there's an understanding of the power of being seen and heard and loved. And so it becomes this lovely two-way street. And over time, as this mask is dropped and this love is being shared, we can surrender into a different relationship. It's a relationship with divine love. All that energy that was going into maintaining an image and making sure that it all looked good just falls away, is no longer needed. It's a relief. And we can just rest in spiritual truth. There's a natural fruit that's born. We've planted different seeds. And the fruit that appears is that we naturally now become more loving, more kind. We're more at peace. We're not having to manage the image. There's that egoic fear isn't driving our lives. Typically, you'll still pop up occasionally. I'm not saying that it totally falls away. But it's a different life experience. And it's not an effort. It's easy to be loving. It's coming from the overflow of our cup that's full of love. For there's an infinite amount, if you will, infinite source of love in the world, if we're open to it. And this delves into the lived belief in oneness, where we recognize that each and every one is of this one life. And it's easier to allow the differences between folks to not become major challenges or relationship enders. How many of us these days in the United States are in relationships, family often, maybe old friends, where the politics of the day have become so divisive that it's a real challenge just to be in someone's presence? But if I'm able to be vulnerable and open and recognize my wholeness, to be loving and to be kind, not requiring the other individual to be a certain way, recognizing that they also, even if I totally don't agree with a lot of their beliefs and a lot of their actions, they must be a reflection of this one life. So it's this belief in living in this belief of oneness. But that's not the end, because ultimately it's still a belief. And notice that in our authenticity, there's still a me being authentic. There's a me being loving. Now, there's a self, it's healed and it's open, but it's a separate self all the same. So there's another threshold that we can cross, where belief itself grows quiet. Now, meditation is a great example of this. And folks meditate for a variety of reasons. But one of the typical main foundational pieces of meditation is that we're quieting the mind. We're quieting the thoughts, which allows the beliefs to be quieted. And ultimately, when the beliefs are quieted, it's not that we stop operating in the world, but we definitely are spiritual expressions in human form. But we move with a quiet wisdom as opposed to yada, 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 a lot of thinking. Even if that thinking is kind and being open. We get to a point where we realize truly that the loving one and the love itself are never really two things. There isn't a self that's being loving and the divine love of spirit, of life, of God, however we want to describe it. That love, that divine spiritual heart, is in and through and as everything. Now, the omnipotent and the omnipresence, as Holmes talked about it, of God, is not just limited to the creative process, the thinking, if you will, but it's the spiritual heart. The love is in and through and as everything. And so we can move to a place where we don't just believe in oneness, but we live from it and ultimately as it. So the scaffolding, those old beliefs, those rickety scaffolding actually just falls away and allows us a glimpse, an openness to the wisdom that lies within. If you've ever had a call to do something, whether it's spiritual or start a business or to have children, whatever that call may have been, something born of a deeper place than a thought or a belief of the heart. This is the idea of coming from a place where the lines of separation have started to fade away. As openness becomes our way of being, relationships move beyond me and you, us and them. Relationship is a recognition that it may appear to be two of us, but there's actually one of us. It's the relationship of one of us as two expressions of spirit. And I'm not just speaking of romantic type of relationships, any relationship. The old dividing lines basically stop drawing themselves. They just aren't there. Now, a simple example is if you've ever been in a conversation with somebody and it just starts to, you get in this flow and you're not trying to think about what is the next thing I'm going to say. You're not trying to make sure you look good. You're just in this conversation and it's flowing. And next thing you know, 2 hours have gone by and it's like, what the heck happened? Well, you were in this flow. It was the one in a constant expression with no self-reference taking place. So you can always think of it as there was no self there, right? It was consciousness expressing. We're not rehearsing the next line. We're just present and in the conversation. You're just with each other to some degree. But even that, being with someone gives the impression that you can be separate. And in the physical world, it appears we're separate, of course. But the truth is, it's just the one life expressing back and forth. And what comes from this is a recognition of no separate self, that there's a way of living in the world as no self. There's no self to defend. There's nothing to take personal, because to take something personal, I have to be identified as a person. Now that may sound a little woo-woo, a little out there, but think about it. What is a person? We're in human form, but we're so much more than just a human form. We're truly the one life. Expressing is this mind-body organism, in this case known as James. With that spiritual heart in and through and as everything. So the mask dropped away, leading away to openness, leading away to being seen and heard, the opportunity to be loved. And this next threshold is really the dropping of the identity of being separate. But there's I thoughts. I want this, I want that. But who's the I? What's the I? If you're talking about a desire and being pulled by a vision, that's something deeper. That's more encompassing than I thoughts or me want this, me want that, me desires this. It's a subtle difference, but it's a very real difference. It's the idea of being pulled by a vision, the guidance, the wisdom of spirit speaking in those moments, where our ego, our desire to be in charge, our desire to be separate, whether we realize it or not, driving that car, moves over the passenger seat, and spirit really is driving the vehicle, as us. And it's interesting because then the creative power, the infinite possibilities of life really can move easier through our experience, because there's not just a little local me trying to manage everything. And also, I don't need to take action to be loving. I just show up as love. I show up as spirit, show up as the presence. Now, this doesn't mean that we never can slip back and feel hurt or, want to hide, or that we discover some aspect, belief from years ago maybe, where we didn't believe we were whole and complete. But it's not the predominant way that we show up in the world. We show up as the love, we show up as the peace. We show up as aspects of the one life. Now, Ernest Holmes, in explaining this oneness in The Science of Mind, stated that all individuality merges into universality. All forms are rooted in one common creative mind, and the Spirit of God is the Spirit of man. So he's explaining kind of what's going on in the process, if you will, the shift in perspective. And he also provided a roadmap on how to live. It was from this thing called you. He said, see God in everyone, the same God with a different face, the same animating principle with a different form, the same divine presence clothed in individual expression. So we understand what's taking place. We understand how to move in the world. I say it this way. There's a power for good in the universe, and each of us is an individualized expression of the one life. And as we come to know this presence within ourselves as our divine true nature, we cannot help but recognize the same divine presence looking back at us in everyone we meet. So just a real quick recap. The fearful ego is going to put on a mask. It takes courage to take the mask down, but it does create the opportunity to be loved. And over time, as that unconditional love fills our bucket, the lines of separation really start to dissolve when we move from being loving to understanding we are the love that we always sought. The spiritual seeker is seeking truth, seeking wholeness, seeking love. And that's the trick of the tail. We already are what we're seeking. And so this week, my invitation is, notice where you may still have a mask. What situation? Where do you put the mask on? And set it down. And let somebody who you believe can love you right then and there see the real you. And ultimately, you'll know yourself as the love that you seek. Namaste.
Thank you, Reverend James. That was a very insightful thought. Make lots of thinking to go on with that one. So we will see you over on Zoom in just a few minutes to discuss that a little bit more. So now it's time for our new Minister Sacred Covenant Easy Prayer. So you can find this on our website, cslmidtown.org, the full version. This is an abbreviated version. There is only one life. This life is God, and I am one with it. I know that my new minister is a revelation of Spirit as principle, fulfilling God's promise. For principle is not bound by precedent, but operates according to law for those who align with it. Together with my community, I see my new minister as inspiring spiritual oneness through wisdom, love, and authenticity. That one that is awakened to inner wisdom, communicates universal truth, and serves as a conduit of divine love, wisdom, and healing energy. One that recognizes the inherent wholeness within all beings and offers teachings grounded in spiritual principles to cultivate inner transformation. One that extends love, compassion, and Spirit's transformative power into the wider community, fostering connections that heal, uplift, and uplift individuals on their unique journeys. As I accept the highest expression of a new minister into my life, I know they will be revealed in a way that expresses Spirit and serves the highest good of all touched by their presence. I am grateful. God is good, and so it is. There we go. Now it's time for our conscious giving. So you can donate at cslmidtown.org/donate. You can scan the QR code on the screen. And we appreciate every one of you who's here every single week, donates all the time. And for those of you that may not have been giving recently, please consider doing that. Just a one-time donation or an ongoing small donation. If you're being fed by these messages we're getting to you every single week, we would appreciate that to keep this work going, to serve you and others who might be attracted to this idea. So now let's say our affirmation for prosperity. I live in a universe of abundance. As I freely and joyfully give, I join in the divine flow. And all that I are with life returns to me multiplied abundantly. And so it is. All right, a couple of announcements. I want to thank Maya for being our practitioner today. Happy birthday, Maya! It's our birthday today. And next week we have Reverend Deb Hammond bringing herself and her music with us. Her talk is going to be recognizing our shared wholeness. And the study group has moved on to a new book. They're reading and studying this thing called You by Ernest Holmes. They meet at 10 a.m. on Sunday mornings. You can join them on our Zoom link. If you go to cslmidtown.org and scroll down to the bottom, there's a Zoom link with a passcode to get into the meeting. And they're discussing that you don't have to have read the message that week, whatever that week's, to participate in the discussion. But that's an awesome book if you haven't already read it. Or if you had, maybe a refresher would be good. And now, let's do our affirmation of life. I leave this place now knowing something better than I knew before. I go forth into the world with a heart full of love and a mind full of good sense. I look at the world in a greater way, knowing that I have within me everything I need to create the life I desire. I give thanks for this understanding, and I am grateful for the Spirit of life that lives through me. And so it is. Have a great week, everybody. See you next week.